Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In today's episode, Bridezilla Karen ends up looking like a pauper at her own wedding. Live in a rental for over a year without paying rent? Good luck in jail. Screw me? Screw you, I want my money. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Bridezilla Karen ends up looking like a pauper at her own wedding. I, F48, have known Pat, F48, for decades. As far as I can remember, she was fixated on having 5 children and a picket fence dream life. I slowly cut ties with her in college because she was an opportunist and I didn't trust her. She is both manipulative and forceful. Her idea of cute rubs me the wrong way. Pat likes to walk like a penguin when she wants to elicit pity, and she usually does this when she wants to evoke the underdog narrative. I've never seen someone act so despicable and ridiculous at the same time. I moved on with my life. Happily got rid of her for years. Pat eventually found me on Facebook. I accepted her friend request out of politeness. Pat has become the epitome of a permissive mother. Her 5 kids do as they please and she never calls them out. She tried to force a relationship between me and her daughters, and made them call me auntie. Pat tried to drop them at my house uninvited. Her phone calls were insistent, she tried to monopolize my time, and she began to show up at my job. I created some boundaries so she tried to find loopholes. It was a nightmare. My husband and I hosted a party for the community center, not the real name, new members. The community center is actually a very informal initiative, and my husband and I mainly serve the homeless population. We prefer to help strangers instead of catering to potentially narcissistic acquaintances. We don't mind lending a hand, but we have encountered truly dishonest choosing beggars. There are other services, like one of the members who helps women get their wedding and prom dresses for free. The community center location headquarters is actually a farm owned by an elderly couple. There is a barn, a venue and a very nice green field with an artificial lake and some fowl. They charge for the use of their facilities, weddings, etc., but not for community-oriented stuff. Pat had always been salty at her husband for demanding that she go back to work after baby number 3. In the meantime, he worked 3 jobs. She demanded he get her pregnant to fulfill her dream of having 5 kids. He didn't agree because he was already nearly 45 and felt like he might never be able to retire. She got away with bringing new babies into this world anyway. Her fascination with being pregnant comes from all the attention she gets. She had at least 1 miscarriage in between each kid. Pat latched on to our group. She never missed any of our activities. I hated having her in my house, but it was an open invitation that included virtually everyone and she was very active as an event organizer. I didn't like the way her kids behaved. We have a designated area for parties and entertainment, but her kids ended up inside my bedroom. We ended up having to keep watch of them and enjoyed 0 of our own party. I called her days later to get my point across regarding their overall behavior, but she completely cut me off and began talking about herself and said her kids wanted to come visit again and use our pool. I never answered that. I didn't want to say no, I will not have your brats over. She also called me as summer was approaching specifically to let me know her middle daughter was bored and wanted to spend a week at our home. I politely declined, citing that me and my husband have to work and cannot entertain guests. Pat paid no heed. Her kid called me on the weekend, calling me auntie and attempted to coax me by saying Mom says you invited me to spend summer with you. I quickly clarified and offered an explanation to avoid hurting a kid's self-esteem. Never mind. Her daughter just hung up on me. Pat's Facebook also showed some red flags. Some cryptic rants here and there were visible, along with friends' comments and complaints on how she asked a particular person to watch her kids only for a couple of hours and ended up leaving them all day. Another of her friends criticized her girls' night out because Pat had just asked them to be patient and wait until she could pay back some money that she owed them, yet she had money to spend on Friday night outings. I thought those very public comments on private matters were more like a cry of lost patience. Unpleasant things began to happen. Like the time she volunteered to wrap the Christmas presents for underprivileged kids. We all wanted to create a mix of less costly gifts with really nice ones. Surprisingly, some nice and eye-catching toys and games went missing, but turned up under her Christmas tree, courtesy of her mother-in-law's FB posts. No one could prove anything, but it was hate-inducing. Or the time my daughter called me in tears to pick her up after she attended Pat's daughter's birthday, Casey. My daughter had been ignored all night because she didn't gift her the expensive gaming stuff Casey practically demanded. My daughter did ask, but I said no. We would buy her a very nice and thoughtful present according to her taste. So when I went to pick her up, my daughter was sitting alone in the living room while Casey and her friends stayed outside. Stories about Pat and her family multiplied. The owners at the farm, community center, decided keep their gates locked unless they had guests or events because Pat got in the habit of driving in whenever she pleased, and it was either her kids screaming and disturbing ongoing weddings, throwing rocks at the koi in the lake or harassing the geese in the yard. Or how she stiffed another soccer mom with the lunch bill and then pulled the struggling financially card. Or how other parents hated her because she created unnecessary hostile competition. When my daughter turned 13, I allowed her to wear my grandma's ring. It's not an expensive piece of jewelry, but it's vintage and girls nowadays wanna look boho. My granny gave it to me when I became a teenager, so I passed it on to my kid so she could wear it on her birth week. It was weird that she became quiet and distracted after that. She also didn't want to go to school, and my husband and I became suspicious. She never opened up, and my other kids had no clue. We went to her school, but her teachers assured us nothing had changed in her environment. My husband and I suspected she was being bullied, but our kid gave us no tools to support her. My kid is very sunny and very compassionate. She has never had any problems with other kids. I called her best friend's mom. Natalie, my kid's BFF, told us what was going on. Casey, Pat's eldest, and my daughter had become close. I knew this and wasn't too thrilled. I found the age, Casey was 17, gap not exactly inappropriate, but I'd rather see my daughter spend time with friends in the same age range. Casey is very beautiful and a gifted student. She is also very conceited. To make this story short, she asked my daughter if she could try on the ring and refused to give it back. She later claimed that she lost it, but would look for it, so my daughter was distraught. My daughter kept asking for her ring, and as a result, Casey shunned her and spread the word that my kid was trying to steal her ring. Some kids at school took Casey's side. So now Casey just wore my kid's jewelry to school like nothing happened. If that doesn't qualify as taunting, I don't know what does. My guilt comes from not being able to get my daughter to open up and feel safe telling me the truth. I talked to her and she burst into tears. I was both pained as a mother and furious that some teenage TCH was doing this under our noses. I went straight to Pat's car after school. I asked to talk as Casey was about to go in. So I grabbed Casey's hand and asked to see her jewelry. Casey froze and she tried to make a fist, so I became relentless. Casey yelled "Mom," and Pat struggled to get out of the car. I slid the ring off. Casey has tiny hands and wore the ring on her index finger. First Pat yelled at me. After I confronted her with the engraving on the band, my grandma's maiden name, she argued it was loaned to her daughter by my kid. Then she said she bought it. I paid no heed. I did warn them that I knew Casey had become an abusive friend to my daughter. Pat called me to tell me off. She said she was trying to raise an assertive young woman and I had just messed that up by being overbearing. She never apologized for her thief of a child. Pat's husband, Hank, is what can be described as a doormat. Pat wore him down to a knob. He had no choice but to obey her to keep the peace. She was a bully who actively withdrew affection when he didn't follow her wishes, even in public. So she got kids number 4 and number 5 after a relentless campaign that included leaving him for 2 months. Her pregnancies were a nuisance because she expected to be treated like the only lady who has even been pregnant. She strolled around in a wheelchair almost immediately after getting pregnant, and she would get very sick on weekends, so her kids were often sent to friends and family so that she could rest. Pat systematically bullied Hank. She would leave town and take the kids with her. Poor Hank would look distraught, drinking on his porch, or just looking really lonely. This is how she got off the hook and was able to leave her job. Hank had virtually no voice, so he struggled to keep the marriage together. Everyone liked him, but hated her equally. Hank loved to talk to other people, but seemed concerned that Pat would be upset. Over time, according to my husband, Hank began to show signs of depression and mental distress. Our friend, Lena, runs the wedding/prom dress initiative. It's not complicated. Dresses are sourced from donations, eBay, trunk shows, etc. Unusually beautiful dresses are retained so that more than one bride gets to wear them. In some cases, a bride will pay $50, but most of the time, the dresses are donated to the bride. Pat was involved in this. Lena kept her in because they never had any issues and her task was limited to just shipping the dresses out. Pat decided to renew her vows and her Bridezilla Karenzilla attitude became the icing on the cake. For starters, she bullied another couple into giving up their wedding date at the farm because she needed her renewal to match her exact wedding date. They were not impressed with her harassment, so they booked another venue. As a result, the farm owners were pissed because Pat was already costing them money after she had successfully negotiated a cut in their rate because she couldn't afford it, but will repay by doing maintenance work around the venue. She never made good on her word. Pat became attached to a particular dress that was already assigned to another bride. Lena made it clear that she would need to pay for her own dress. So Pat played it cool and shipped the wrong gown instead. She was adamant that it was the right dress, despite all the notes on Leah's agenda. The other bride was truly gracious about it. She was obviously disappointed, but never made a scene. What bothered me most is that I picked that dress and bought it for $40 at a garage sale, not my money, Leah's money. It was a vintage dress, ankle length, white with lots of lace, and a huge bargain. Again, when confronted, Pat did a Casey and used the "this is mine" strategy. We felt so bad for the other bride that we did our best to get her something nice to wear. The other bride was a true fighter. She had pulled out of welfare, earned her high school diploma, and was working to get on her feet by trying to earn a certificate as an acrylic nail technician. So, her reward was to have some Karen steal her dress. Pat never admitted to messing up, but just by the fact that she claimed it was her dress, we knew. Lena never allowed her in her warehouse again. Their last phone fight ended with Pat bringing up the other bride's past, like it mattered, and this conversation is over, it's my dress, and you are mistaken. That was weeks before the other bride's wedding. Pat went all out on her wedding decor. She spent way too much. She hired a caterer for some food, mainly mimosas and appetizers, but the wedding invitation included a request for specific dishes for her Sunday brunch wedding. Either she ran out of banquet money, or was on a complete moocher mode. I picture the penguin walking upon practically asking everyone to supply her wedding reception grub and I cringe. There is nothing wrong with potluck weddings. In fact, they can be a nice addition to a very cozy and family-oriented wedding reception. But don't you need to at least be close to your guests in order to ask for such a thing? Even I got an invitation. I told everyone I wasn't going because I was very uncomfortable being told what to bring, and was probably expected to give them a cash gift on top of that. Some of the older ladies in our group agreed. Some said they would not decline in advance because she is a bully, and they didn't want a confrontation. Lena called me the night before Pat's re-wedding. Lena was there to close the Saturday night bingo and Pat was awfully friendly, but that's what she does whenever things are going her way. Lena peeked into the garment bag and saw the exact same dress while Pat was caught up supervising the wedding decoration. The thing with Karens is that they expect everyone to suck it up, or make their dreams come true, or they simply underestimate everyone and think we are all fools. Lena is a very straightforward person with a so-sue-me attitude. She told me she would just ruin the dress. After all, it was hers, so she could do whatever she wanted. If Pat wanted to take legal action, and should things get ugly, she needed to prove ownership. However, the dress was the same, the marks inside the hem and the tags were the same. Even the tag numbers that were punched to identify each dress for logistics purposes matched. Pat had the dress altered, with some extra beading and dyed to a deep cream color. But it was obviously the same garment. Lena and I snuck in before the venue was closed for the night. All brides are allowed to stay in a small bedroom for a small charge, so that they don't need to drive in on their wedding day. Honestly, the makeshift chapel was gorgeous. I don't know how she paid for it, but it was full of flowers and presumptuous details. I naively brought in some ink to spill on the dress, but Lena said she wanted something more awful, like a nasty surprise. Ink would be too obvious, and if she saw it ahead, she may be able to snag another gown from somewhere. No, the ideal thing was to have her trust the dress was fine. So Lena locked herself in a bathroom stall and completely cut out the back panel. She patiently put it back on its hanger and zipped the bag. We left through the emergency door with the back of the dress stuffed inside Lena's purse. I completely hate people who target and steal from anyone they, Pat and her kid, calculate to be in a weaker position. The wedding was scheduled at 9 a.m. Pat called me at 7 a.m., but I ignored her calls. I picked up by 8 a.m., both curious and wondering if she suspected anything. Pat was frantic. She was crying that her dress was missing by half. I purposely made her explain, being annoyingly dense and continually interrupting like she does, and stalling the conversation. She asked me if I could lend her my wedding dress. I said no, sorry. She then asked me if I would help her get a dress. I was satisfied to remind her that the town's bridal shops were closed on Sunday, and the others that would open were almost an hour away. The farm is already almost 1 hour away from our town. If Pat could get a shop to rent a dress, she would need to try the dress on and get it steamed. Even if the dress was ready to wear, it would easily take more than 2 hours round trip. She tried to ask me to go pick a dress. Who would pay for this? Even if a shop were open and brought her a dress, it would add to the cost. Also, these shops open at 10 or 9:30 at earliest. By time they got to her, it would be time to wrap up the wedding because she needed to clear the venue by 12 o'clock for the next event. She broke down and mumbled some stupid stuff I didn't understand. So Pat hung up on me and called Lena instead. She asked Lena to bring her anything she had available. Lena and I ended up delivering the most outdated, moss-smelling, oversized dress. Pat's disappointment was a mix between angry and emotional. She also tried to wear her knee-length silk bridal slip as a wedding dress, but it was too obvious and it really looked cheap. She tried to get her daughter to give her her own dress to wear with an open-back zipper, due to fitting issues, but Casey refused, asking if she was supposed to attend the wedding naked. She got a point, plus Casey is petite. The dress needed a petticoat to plump up the skirt, which wasn't available. So it dragged all over the floor, and Pat had to keep pulling it up. Pat walked down the aisle with one hand on her bouquet and another one grabbing her dress. The dress looked limp and weird with the arrangements of pins, they didn't show, that caused the sleeves and neckline to pucker into messy rims. She spent the ceremony looking uncomfortable and out of place. Very few people attended, but that was not part of any revenge, that was just how people reacted to her entitled attitude. The dress looked awful. The reception portion of the wedding had all this princely decoration, a very nice cake, and a bridezilla with a dress from hell. I didn't stay, but I was told she was so disappointed she spent her wedding sulking. There was no dance, no actual speech. She had to change into a shirt and leggings because the dress was too uncomfortable. Everyone talked about how Pat put on her flip-flops and walked around aimlessly until she ordered the ushers to start folding up the chairs within 1 hour of the reception. So she practically kicked everyone out and the cake was never cut. Pat wasn't the same after this. She was not as loud and avoided everyone. I think she was disappointed that nobody ran to her rescue, not even her family who came from out of town. Her husband finally cracked under all the pressure and sought some help. He was slaving away and coming home to clean the house while Pat used her kids as an excuse to spend like crazy. Hank also had to do kid homework because Pat never had time or never had patience. She also refused to get a part-time job so her kids could attend an after-school and get help with their school stuff. Therapy seemed to help Hank because the last time Pat left with her kids, he didn't seem distraught. He would be riding his bicycle and could be seen more relaxed while mowing his lawn. Hank told my husband that he had contemplated suicide after their third kid. When Pat returned, he maintained the routine, but was interested in going out by himself and doing things for himself. We began to see Pat alone all the time. Hank was seen less and less in the same car and eventually moved in with his parents. He filed for divorce on the grounds of emotional cruelty, and I don't think he won. Instead, I'm not sure of this because this is what I was told, there was some sort of a settlement or agreement that she would not get close or interact with him unless it has to do with the kids. I also don't know if Pat even actually suspected what happened to her dress. She slowly pulled away from the community center and became less active in social gatherings. Pat also removed me from her Facebook, as well as mostly everyone else from school and the center. Live in a rental for over a year without paying rent? Good luck in jail. This has all been finalized, so I decided to post it. For obvious reasons, I didn't want to post it while it was ongoing. Last summer I bought a house trailer and decided to rent it out. It needed some work, so I posted 2 months free rent for putting carpet down in the living room, hooking up the hot water heater, and putting in a toilet. Got a nice couple with a newborn willing to do it. Great. No lease, month to month. No security deposit, and the rent was $450 a month. So they did the work, so I didn't ask for rent for 2 months. Everything was fine. Side note, there are a few little state laws that come into play. If you don't pay rent for 3 consecutive months, you are considered a squatter, which means the landlord doesn't have to fix the property and can actually padlock it and deny you entry. If you're on house arrest and get formally evicted, you could be violated for it. Also, you can be formally evicted even if you have already moved out, so the landlord can get rent due. Also, even though there are eviction bans, if it happened before the ban, then it can still go through. Plus a few other conditions that still allow someone to be evicted. It's up to the judge really. Fast forward 5 months and still no rent money. Yes, they had a newborn and they were young and didn't have a lot of money, but the husband can spend $1,500 on a new engine for his project car. They can afford to go out to eat and spend money on electronics, but no rent. So after that 3rd month I did nothing. The weather was turning cold. I didn't put in the furnace like I promised, and if they hadn't had a newborn I would have padlocked the house. They were bragging about their tax refund. I gave them a shot to catch up, and they basically said that they knew their rights and were in a rent strike, illegally I might add. You will see later. COVID happened, husband got laid off, so I gave them a break. When he went back to work I asked for back rent again and was told to fuck off. I finally had enough. I told them they had 14 days to get out, or I was doing a formal eviction, and seeing he was on house arrest he knew what that meant. I honestly was trying to keep him from having to go back to jail and keep an eviction off of their record. I was trying to be nice and civil. So they left and I cut my losses until I checked the property. Everything they put in the removed. Everything they got free rent for was gone. I got pissed and filed for a formal eviction. It didn't go as they hoped. They said I didn't provide heat, so they went on a rent strike. Only they didn't file that with the courts or hold the money aside. They just thought they could stop paying rent. What they put into the trailer was less than the rent. The judge agreed with me that seeing they took everything I was due those 2 months' rent. And the biggest. He started slamming my character, so I said, well, you didn't tell me you were going to be going on house arrest when you rented the property before. Then the judge looked bored, but he perked up. He asked them if that was true. They responded that it was, and he was ready to make his ruling. I received 15 months back rent at $450 a month and $2,000 in damages because the way they removed the stuff they damaged a lot of things. As for him, the judge said he had no choice but to turn the eviction over to his parole officer. Fast forward to this month. His house arrest was violated and he was arrested. They actually had the nerve to ask me to speak on his behalf. I didn't. Ruling was his remaining 6 months are now being spent in jail. They have a bad eviction on their record and they owe me money. Know the law before you play the game. Screw me? Screw you, I want my money. This is a revenge in multiple parts, and apologies up front for the length. About 30 years or so ago I was 17 and about to head to university. An acquaintance through my parents' church offered me a job working with him learning to be a pizza chef. Awesome, I'd need money for uni and I'd already had a stack of jobs, so working hard was nothing new for me, but being a cook certainly was. My experience with Italian was limited to Pizza Hut. So I accepted that at the start I was a liability, not a help. I started work, and to start with I worked free. Cool, but when it got to the point about 3 months later that I was opening by myself and taking whole shifts by myself, well, I should be paid. I screwed up all of my 17-year-old courage and confronted the owner, let's call him Nick, because that was his name. He huffed and puffed and tried to tell me how terrible I was, but I stood my ground and now I'm on minimum wage. Not bad in my eyes at the time. I worked there for another 3 years, through most of my uni degree, often putting in 30 hours contact at uni, 30 hours at the restaurant and 30 hours of study. It was hectic, but just became the norm. Towards the end I became a lot more savvy and started researching labor laws, keeping records of my pay packets and end-of-year tax receipts, and realized Nick and other co-owners were screwing me. I wasn't on the correct rate, they weren't deducting tax correctly, and a couple of other accounting oversights. By then I was working with my, at the time, mate, let's call him girlfriend creeping dickhead. It was Sunday night, the place was packed, I had tickets all the way down my line, and girlfriend creeping dickhead and I were pumped. We had a new boss, who just bought into the business, who thought he was the king of the world because he was now a restaurateur, a right wanker, but after years of having to stay back to cook pizzas on World Cup nights for the boss's friends, or Christmas, NYE, etc., I was sorta used to the grandstanding chest-puffing behavior. The night in question, the new boss would not let me start the second pizza oven. Think a 2-tier oven, I was only allowed the top tier on, because it cost too much. So here I am, oven full, 2 pizza chefs running full speed, and we're only falling behind, because one oven wasn't enough, and it was starting to cool down from being so full and open so frequently. New boss gets a couple of tables of mates in. Instead of just asking us to cook some comp garlic bread or whatever, he starts loading up trays himself and putting them in the oven. Not the worst crime, but because he had no idea what he was doing. Every 30s he'd open the oven to check them, cooling the oven down even further, potentially ruining the food we had in there and slowing us down measurably. I had the head chef chewing my ass out as his food was ready to go, but my food on same tickets wasn't. It was hectic and not fun. This garlic bread bandit shit had to stop. Me, new boss, stop fucking with my oven. If you want garlic bread, just ask, I'll get it done immediately for you. New boss, what? Ha. Me, you're messing with my oven, you're cooling it down and we're too busy for this shit, just tell me, and I'll make it. New boss, okay. Did he do it? Nope, he kept on. Cue the same conversation another 2 times, the last time I told him I'd blow my stack if he did it again. You see where this is going. He did it again. Now, after being consistently ripped off and abused, so many kooky stories from that place, for 3 years, my time was up there anyway, and this was the time to do it. I looked at girlfriend creeping dickhead and said, yo. We out of here, he looked back and simply said yup. We stripped our aprons and in front of the entire restaurant, Pizza Kitchen was in full view of the entire restaurant, threw them on the bench and told new boss we quit all this, all these tickets, all the food in the oven you fucked up, and your mate's shitty garlic bread, this is all yours now, good luck. Then we walked out, got some coffees from the baristas, sat in front of the pizza area and watched him absolutely flounder. He had no idea what he was doing, and there was literally no one else there that could help him. We could see food coming out from the kitchen, but the pizza on the same ticket was taking 20 m or more longer to come out, tables were hopping mad, we could hear the grumblings all around us. I'll admit it was dickish, but undeniably satisfying to behold. That's not the ProRevenge though. The ProRevenge was that I'd been stealing my timesheet every Sunday night, photocopying it, and then replacing it Monday mornings. I'd been doing that for over a year. I'd also told girlfriend creeping dickhead to do it. Monday I walk in and Nick was there and was furious at me. As I walking in, you could see his chubby face turn bright red as he bellowed across the restaurant floor, what the fuck do you think you're doing here? Get the fuck out and never come back. Me, Nick, we've gotta talk. We can do it here or we can do it in your office, but trust me, you want to have this conversation privately. Nick, fine, you come with me then, desperately trying to gain the upper hand back, and he storms to his shitty little office out the back. Nick, bullshit, about how he's going to withhold pay and a whole heap of other illegal hot air. Me, you done? Good. Here, read this. I hand him a print out of an Excel spreadsheet, a stack of photocopied timesheets, a stack of photocopied payslips, printed copied of the wage awards, all of which detail the amount he's ripped me off for. Me, you owe me $6 grand. I'll take cash or a check now. Did I mention he and the other bosses had just been simultaneously raided by the tax office, and that they and the business were all on thin fucking ice? Yeah, bad timing for Nick the Dick. Nick, spluttering, wringing his hands, but I can't afford it. Look, I'll show you my bank accounts, as he physically starts scrambling to find his bank statements. Me, Nick, I literally don't give a shit about you, your bank accounts, or your situation. You owe me $6 grand today, or I take all of this to the tax office and all of the other relevant government departments that will be very interested in this, because Nick. I have a feeling if you're doing this to me, you're doing it to other staff here as well, huh? As for not having the money, well, again, not my problem, but you just bought a new $60,000 Pajero, so if you have to run that down to the car yard and sell it, again, I don't give a shit, but I get $6 grand today. He literally teared up a little, I'm not sure why, maybe through frustration, rage or just being screwed by someone he the way beneath him. But seeing a grown man who's abused you for many years cry at your hands is a pretty beautiful thing to behold as a 20-year-old kid. I got a check that day for my whole $6,000 and yes, it cashed. But the best was walking out of his office with girlfriend creeping dickhead standing there who deadpan just looked him in the eyes and said, "Nick, we need to talk." And in they walked in to do the same thing. $10,000 he lost that day. The best part? A few of my friends at the restaurant caught wind of the fact that I had enraged him and asked what it was all about. I let them know how they were being screwed, how to take copies of all of their timesheets, and where to find the relevant laws. I know of several other people who did the same thing to him. And that was how I left the hospitality industry and started working in my field of study, never to look back. Hope you enjoyed my cake day present to y'all. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.